Yeah, July looks like it's going to be a pretty crazy month in Marvel Snap. I think there are maybe multiple meta-defining cards landing this month as we now get to take a closer look at the fully officially revealed final versions of all the upcoming cards in the Spider-Man Brand New Day season. This one looks pretty dang spicy. Could be a big month for the game too if people are hyped about the new Spider-Man Brand New Day movie. But that said, let's go ahead and kick things off with the new Season Pass card. You're never going to believe this. It's Spider-Man Brand New Day. How many times can I say Spider-Man Brand New Day in this video about Spider-Man Brand New Day cards? We'll find out. But this is a new 1/2 with movable twice. So after this moves to a location, give one of your other cards there +1 power, even unrevealed ones, which is actually a pretty crazy effect here, honestly, with Spider-Man Brand New Day, because this is like old school Nightcrawler. Like, you know, Nightcrawler for the longest time was a 1/2 and was getting played as a 1/2, but you get to move him twice. Okay, so like that's already way better, because you know you can kind of sneak him around, mess with the opponent's plans a little bit, fill out locations or not, still access otherwise inaccessible locations. All that normal upside of movable cards, but now also you're getting a buff to another card every time you move him, which means like he's really kind of a 1/4 at a base, because you get +1/+1. You can also buff key targets, move him over to your Captain Carter, and then move him back over to your Iska or whatever, and get some like, you know, extra utility out of these buffs. So he's kind of a buff card and a move card. On top of that, if you move him through other mechanisms, he actually gets to buff again. So you could, like, you know, Heimdall him later and he still gets another buff. Like that, the move here is separate, right? Like, you know, if you stick him in a Madam Web and move him, like, so he becomes both like a payoff with this little buff, like not, you know, as big of a payoff as other move cards. Like he's not going to get as many points per move as something like a Vulture, but you can put those points and kind of redistribute them and you're not all in, right? Like there's other upsides to that. But he also, you know, multiple triggers for things like a Kraven moving around all the time, right? And we're going to see other cards in this video that care about having movable cards and moving movable cards. So he's going to be a trigger for stuff like Aunt May as we look at her later. He just becomes this absolute Swiss Army knife card that is not only, I think, fantastic for move decks, especially those that want a lot of moves, whether that's, you know, Hydra Stomper, Aunt May, Mary Jane, all this stuff we're going to look at in this video, or just, you know, Cravens, etc. The classic examples too, Hydra Stomper, Kraven, or I think he's just like a great general utility card that can go in any tempo deck. He's basically a 1/4 with all that sneaky Nightcrawler upside. Sometimes that'll be like Angela buff decks where, you know, you want to have those movable cards for Angela, so you can plop them on Angela, get the Elsa proc, and then still move them out, right? There's that side of it, but just like any card that cares about a little stat buff, like we talked about with Captain Carter, Iska, etc., he's just super high utility. I mean, I think this literally could go in like almost any deck outside of like, you know, super specialized stuff like maybe end of turn or ongoing or whatever that has a very, very specific build. But like just such a good general use 1-drop that like any deck can run, and that's pretty insane. I think that makes this just really, really good in move, really, really good elsewhere. May not like always feel like the best card in your deck or anything, but he's just going to feel playable in so many different shells that I think we're going to end up seeing a lot of Spider-Man Brand New Day. So moving on to this super duper ultra mega premium pass, whatever it's called, something like that. This is Mary Jane, a new 3/3, end of turn. Give each of your cards that moved this turn +1 power. So this becomes like a crazy power buffer for move decks. Sometimes that's going to be Spider-Man Brand New Day, right? Like he already gets, you know, a couple extra points here off Mary Jane. I think also just like slam a Heimdall, he might move up to 8 cards at the end of the game or whatever, 7, 8 cards. That's like +7 power from your Mary Jane right there, just all at once. You also have Venus you could put in the mix as well, so that every Mary Jane buff actually becomes +2 instead of +1. Like, I actually think there might be a deck that's literally just like Venus, Mary Jane, and Heimdall and no other move cards, and it's just like, hey, this is just like a +2 power buff at the end of the game on top of, you know, whatever else. Captain Carter's the classic buff recipient, you know, move your Sebastian Shaw with Heimdall and you got something going. In other words, like, you don't have to just move movers. You can take buff cards and move those. Like, what if somebody's ghost spidering a Sebastian Shaw or a Captain Carter. Like suddenly it's like, whoa, you can actually do that, and it might be halfway decent because Mary Jane is going to potentially put a lot of extra points in that. But then also, of course, it's just the move stuff too. I'm not saying you can't play this move. It's also insane in move because you give your Human Torch an extra +1 power, that's going to start replicating as well. Give your Multiman an extra +1 power, that's going to start replicating as well. So there's multiple ways to take this buff, duplicate it in both move shells and any other stat buff deck. But then also, it's like just from a raw output standpoint, even if you're not multiplying those buffs, she's just a lot of points. Like it's, you've seen Hydra Stompers that are getting it easy +10, +12. Mary Jane is basically going to match that, right? Like she's just each turn going to be pumping in even more and more stats. So like she's basically a Hydra Stomper with like additional upside and again, like spreading power instead of like putting it all in, which depending on the scenario could be good, could be bad, but also like, why not both? Right? If you have a deck that's just moving a ton of cards every single turn, Spider-Man's, movables, Madam Webs, right? It's like, dude, you're just going crazy. Like you just, it's just stats on stats on stats, and then spike a Hydra Stomper later too. Like, why not, right? So I think Mary Jane again is just really, really strong. I think this has a ton of upside and really maybe even beyond move decks as well. I think experimenting with Venus and just like a little bit of move here, like obviously you need some move aspect, but can it be just a Heimdall? Can it be a few select move cards? Can it be just a Madam Web? And like, can Madam Web and Heimdall make this interesting? Maybe that's enough. I actually, I don't know. That's a possibility, along with maybe some just like good movable cards, Nightcrawler, Nocturne, Spider-Man Brand New Day. That might be a deck. It doesn't have to be like Torches and Vultures and all those classic examples. It can go a totally different direction. So I think, again, this is a very high promise, very high output, potentially very, very strong card. Moving on next up to Aunt May here. She's a 2/3. End of turn again. If you used a movable ability, give a movable card in your hand -1 cost and +2 power. So again here, a little bit of a move synergy card, but this time specifically with that movable keyword like we saw on Spider-Man Brand New Day, we see on Nightcrawler, we see on Nocturne, we see on Vision. I know there's other examples, but if you do that any given turn, right, this is actually a really nice discount and a really significant buff as well. We've already seen from Ascani, right, like Mother Ascani, that a cost discount and a buff like this can actually be so nuts. Now, of course, the duplication on Ascani is also crazy powerful. I don't want to sleep on how good that aspect of it is, but even just playing one of those, how good that can feel. And Aunt May can do that multiple turns, right? Like multiple turns, like even on turn 2, starting on turn 2, she's already discounting and giving a power boost. And you also, have 3, 4, and 5. Turn 6, it's probably not as relevant that she would discount something in hand because you don't have time to play it. The power technically could matter with rare occasions or summons or Draculas or whatever, but unlikely to be relevant. So you probably get like 4 good turns here if you're playing enough movable cards, like Spider-Man on 1 in particular, into Aunt May on 2. He can move, and then he can move again on 3 while you load up a new movable card, like play a Nocturne on 3. So then you have a move on 4. So like each turn you really could hit one. And if you have a super high density of those, toss in the Spider-Punks, Divisions, etc., all of those, you're talking about Aunt May potentially giving you an extra 8 power and 4 cost and discount, and I don't think she needs that much to be relevant. If you just hit twice on this, might actually still be a pretty great card, because you're kind of getting like a 2/7 that discounted twice. That's a 0/7 in like net total output, which is pretty cool. Now, I do think Aunt May is definitely less adaptable than perhaps Mary Jane and Spider-Man Brand New Day. I feel like those can both kind of be a little bit more experimental in the sort of things they're able to do. She's clearly going to need a deck that's like more all in on movable, because you need enough stuff to keep triggering it every single turn, and theoretically need enough stuff in hand as well. You could kind of focus in on one thing in hand maybe, but you need to have enough movement pieces happening. So in other words, like Ghost Spider and Doctor Strange don't work with Aunt May. It's specifically that movable keyword ability. So I think anyway, that's how it's written. I assume that's how it works. So like more narrow, but I actually think still very strong. And I think like just using a movable deck like that is honestly going to be pretty cool. Like I think there's a lot of play on that, and it could still have Mary Jane, of course, right? Like Mary Jane is still great in that shell. Like these all go together, but I'm just saying like those two have a little bit more outside application. This is probably a bit more restricted, but I think still within that context, crazy powerful. I think actually still very, very good. Now, another angle for both of these two cards we've talked about is end of turn. Can you toss an Invisible Woman first steps in here? Is there an end of turn angle on these? Like at some point you're kind of fighting too many battles. Like you talked about Venus, we talked about Invisible Woman first steps now. Like how many of these 3-drops and stuff can you squeeze in while still getting enough movements happening? That might be a little tough to get all these end of turn pieces together while still kind of satisfying all this stuff, but something to think about anyway. I think maybe an Invisible Woman first steps and a Mary Jane with a Heimdall is still actually kind of a cool deck too, right? Like, man, Invisible Woman first steps, Iska, you know, some of this like end of turn and buff stuff happening together, and then Heimdalling it all at the end to surprise your opponent. That's a deck. I think that's actually legit going to be a good deck. So anyway, probably not relevant for Aunt May, but still at the end of the day, I think pretty good card, honestly. So moving on next up here to Tarantula, a new 2/2 with yet again an end of turn, but probably again not maybe one that synergizes so well with these other ones. End of turn, if you have the highest power among cards in play, give this and 2 cards in your hand +1 power. So we're seeing here again the kind of Wilson Fisk ability. I'm about to sneeze, excuse me. I thought I had talked myself out of it, but it came through. It happened. So another one of these Wilson Fisk abilities, which we know Wilson can hit really consistently. Now, Tarantula's timing is definitely a little bit weirder because, you know, sometimes the 2-drop is what gets you there on Wilson going into turn 3. Like often though, it is still the 1-drop. You know, historically that's been Martyr, Hydra Bob, even Nightcrawler in that deck. I think sometimes pops in too. So Tarantula a little bit more reliant on that 1-drop probably, but like we said, if you have enough of those, if you're running Hydra Bob, Nightcrawler, Martyr, there's a pretty good chance actually that Tarantula might connect. And then sometimes, you know, he himself will technically hit and be that, because some decks just don't play anything for the first couple turns, or they play a 2-drop themselves, and then Tarantula himself fits and starts triggering this this end of turn, which I like to be clear, I think this end of turn ability is again very good, right? If you maintain this throughout the entire game, right, he's going to get 5 turns of this, which means he's going to gain 5 power himself, because he's giving both himself and cards in hand that +1 power. So he's going to go up to 2/7, and he will buff cards in hand for 10 extra power, which admittedly on turn 6, the ones in hand again aren't really going to be relevant. So maybe kind of 8 extra playable power throughout the course of the game. Maybe this guy puts up 15 extra points for you as a 2-drop, or 15 total points as a 2-drop. That's really, really nice. And again, if you hit key targets with these stats, that could be even better. There's also the kind of like priority considerations and all this other stuff we see in Wilson Fisk decks as well, with like Supergiant, Negasonic, Shell. All of that could come into play too. But like, it's just, you know, it feeds into itself though, right? It's like if you want to have points and want to be leading, this helps your next card get bigger. Now your Debris is back to 3/8 since she just got nerfed or whatever. Your Negasonic's back to 4/5, etc. But you know, it's just points on points on points. So I don't know if this actually goes into a Wilson Fisk deck. Like, is this better than a Scotty Sun or Iron Patriot? Maybe, maybe not. I think those are both pretty cool and both play to the winning aspect as well in their own different way. But I do think there's still probably an angle for this, just because this is ultimately a lot of points and a lot of stat buffs can lead to some pretty cool plays. It's just going to need to have a deck that has like those rewards for the buffs that make it worth it. You know, does it have enough extra payoff to those buffs while also still being able to satisfy this end of turn consistently? So for instance, like a Captain Carter deck is a great buff recipient, but Captain Carter is maybe not the best among having the highest power in play. So you're playing her on turn 3 or something, like you're having a pretty weak turn 3 as opposed to like you want to play a big Debris or whatever. That's more likely, but Debris doesn't care as much about extra points. Like they're fine, but they're just 1 for 1. You're not scaling them. So there's a little bit of a risk of a gap there, but I do think at the end of the day, these numbers are just pretty great. I think there's a good chance somebody playing a priority first deck like this makes Tarantula work. The question again, though, does become like, you know, after turn 2, how hard does this fall off? It's a pretty bad card played later because you need time for all this to scale up. So a few challenges, but there's still an inkling of success here for me. I think if this was a 2/3, this card would be kind of too good, but maybe fine at a 2/2 still. Moving on next up to Boomerang. This is a 2/2, and it reads, when this returns to your hand, randomly steal 4 power from cards in your opponent's hand, and then you can activate this to return it to your hand. So Basically, it's going to be able to return itself to hand, but then also, of course, a bounce deck of any kind, playing, a Toxin, a Beast, whatever, could be extra ways to bounce this to hand. So, you can keep replaying it, keep bouncing it, and continually keep stealing power from those cards in your opponent's hand. So the last time I talked about this in the Elite card video, some of you got a little mixed up on how I described this, but I'm going to double down on that because I think it's actually a really important way to think about this. So you played Boomerang, right? He's a 2/2. He's just a 2/2 until you bounce him somehow, right? So once you bounce him, let's say you activate, right? He is going to jump up to a 2/6 because he's stealing power from your opponent's cards. And then, of course, they're going to have -4 if they theoretically played all those cards out, which they don't always. But if they did, that would be another 4 points. And that would make him a net 210, right? But here's the thing a lot of people aren't considering. To realize the stolen points, like for you to get that +4 that you stole, you have to spend another 2 energy. So he's really a 410, not a 210, right? And again, that is only a 410 if they play all of the cards that he stole power from. More realistically, they might only play like 2 or 3, which means maybe he's like a 4/8 or a 4/9 in that scenario. So then I said, like, this is kind of like having a 2/0 Scorpion or a 4/6 Scorpion, which I think is still, like, that's where people get confused, but I maintain that's still correct. In other words, like, Scorpion roughly hits about 4 cards on average is my argument. He can, of course, technically hit more because he's hitting like the entire hand. So like, it's really not even totally fair, but let's say on average he hits 4 and they're about the same. So in other words, like, you can go for the debuff, right? But to do that, you don't get any stats in play. Like if you go for the Scorpion side of it, like the kind of, stealing aspect, you don't, so he's a 2/0. You spent 2, you bounced him back for free, right? You debuffed 4 cards in hand. Let's say the same as Scorpion, let's pretend, but you don't have any stats. If you want to realize the stats, you have to spend another 2 energy, which means he's now a 4-cost card, and he's now basically a 4-cost Scorpion, but a 4/6 Scorpion. And I'm making the argument, I don't think a 4/6 Scorpion is a very good card. And in fact, again, maybe kind of worse than Scorpion because he doesn't hit every card in hand. So it's like, in other words, every time you want to realize half of this card's upside, the half being the points that you've stolen, you have to spend another 2 energy. So then it's like, you can play him again, but now you're up to 6 total cost. Now, of course, Beast could maybe help that feel a little better, but when you talk about a bounce deck, number one, they haven't been very good at all lately. And number two, it's opportunity cost. He's competing against other cards you could bounce. Is this a better per bounce loop than like a 1-drop? Would you rather just bounce your Rocket Raccoon or your Silver Sable or whatever and have way more flexibility and less like future commitment? Because like you have to now commit to spending another 2 energy to realize half those points. It's like, and part of the problem is like this effect is sort of like delayed because like the steal happens, but then to get the points that you've stolen, you got to spend the energy again. So the steal happens on the bounce, the points you're developing happen on the replay, right? So it's like step by step kind of. And I just feel like to realize the benefit, I don't want to keep having to spend another 2 energy. I feel like bounce decks are going to have better options and they're already not really doing that well. So like the fact that this is always kind of delayed, like if this was a 1-mana card, insane. Like maybe even if it was like stealing just 3 as a 1-mana card would be insane because you'd have so much less overhead replaying this every time, right? But like on its own, I don't think the activate's good enough. I'm not playing a 4/6 Scorpion. I'm just not excited about a 4/6 Scorpion. There's way better ways to afflict. And in a bounce deck, I think there's just better alternatives. I just think there's going to be better ways to spend your energy more efficiently for a deck that needs a lot of like energy flexibility to weave through its turns and stuff. Boomerang feels a bit too prohibitive, I think, at 2. So I know this is kind of confusing framing, but hopefully I broke it down enough to explain exactly what I mean there. But essentially the delay on this and the need to spend more mana to realize the upside of the stolen power, that combination is, I think, going to hold Boomerang back. So next up here, we have Scorpion Spider-Man Brand New Day. This is like a Spider-Man Brand New Day themed month, but we only have 2 like officially themed cards, a villain and Spider-Man, which I think is kind of unfortunate. Maybe they don't want to like spoil more stuff or something. I mean, I know like Punisher's in the movie. We think Jean Grey maybe is in the movie, but I guess we don't know 100%. Anyway, still cool to see this. A 6/8 with ongoing, double the power reductions on all enemy cards. So anytime you've afflicted an enemy, this is going to come in and double that, and specifically only on enemy cards, which is, I think, honestly, pretty nice. Sometimes affliction decks right now just kind of tank their own afflictions as opposed to running Luke Cage. Sometimes you have Luke Cage, but sometimes you like want a big Ajax or whatever. So you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to tank my affliction so that my Ajax gets even bigger. And sometimes that can feel bad that your afflictions sort of go 1 for 1 and only maybe enable another thing. But now if you follow up with Scorpion here, you can kind of go for that big Ajax and also now make all of your pre-played afflictions just more impactful to your opponent. And I think there's going to be scenarios where this easily swings an extra 10, 16, 20 points, you know, a range there. But I think it's definitely going to be possible because, you know, like one Man-Thing can be worth a ton. I can see some curves where it's just like Man-Thing, Ajax, Scorpion, win the game. Like, you know, that honestly could be enough where like the Man-Thing just tanks a spot because it's like a crazy debuff. Ajax with Scorpion in the other spot, right, could be just a crazy spot too. It's like, hey, that's a game-winning line right there. And that doesn't even account for the first 3 turns and other afflictions and stuff. So I actually think this is going to be a powerhouse. I think 8 power is a really good number to baseline for this, where it can still kind of like spike a spot with enough power that it feels like a confident flip, even maybe with just 1 or 2 afflictions in that spot, and then a lot of options for affliction decks to actually contest elsewhere, and a lot of turns to get there too. So I actually do think this will bring about some really strong affliction decks and feel like a nice turn 6 finisher, you know, in that Aurora space, Spectrum space of the past. Like we've had so many examples here, kind of Onslaught, but not really, right? But I think this is a good, I think this is a strong card. I think we're going to see affliction come back with a force thanks to Scorpion here. So next up here are the Sinister Six, which is like such a sick card theme, by the way. I love Sinister Six. I think Spider-Man villains are so freaking cool. I love the Spider-Man animated show as a kid so much, and I love the freaking villains so much. Sandman, Mysterio, Doc Ock, like so good. They're all so green too, by the way, which is pretty interesting. Green, you know, usually you see contrasting colors for villains against heroes. Green and red are pretty contrasty, so that kind of makes sense, I guess. And then yellow and blue also are pretty contrasty. So seeing yellow and green, I guess that makes sense. Green also contrasts pretty well with purple, I feel like, which Mysterio leans. Anyway, this is a whole, it's just, I love Spider-Man's Rogue Gallery. Batman and Spider-Man. I actually prefer Spider-Man's to Batman's probably, but Batman's is pretty top tier too. Anyway, it's a 6/12. Game start. The first 6 characters you draw are evil. After you play them all, merge them into this and add this to the last one's location. So literally the first 6 things you draw that aren't skills, characters, are all going to be kind of marked almost like Zombie Galacti or whatever, right? You play them out, assuming you play all 6, which actually is not trivial for most decks. Like sometimes that would just like be really hard to do because you don't have enough energy. You know, if you hit 2 5-drops or something, it's like, oh, and a 6-drop, it's like, forget it. I literally can't play all these. So you gotta have a deck that's light enough on curve, flexible enough on energy expenditure that, like, you know, works. I'm thinking like a Thanos deck might be pretty cool because like the stones, you know, are really easy to flex in. Once that happens, you play all 6. They're all going to get sucked up into Sinister Six, right? He's still going to be in hand at that stage, whatever. And then it's going to add itself to the spot you played the last one. So once you play that 6th one, it's like, okay, this is where I'm planting my Sinister Six. He's going to absorb a ton of stats. Probably going to be like 25 power or something, right? I guess if it's like all Thanos stones, maybe he's only... Well, God, it'd still be like 20 plus or something. Probably just going to be a card you expect to win a location, right? And it's basically like saying, hey, I'm just adding 12 extra power to everything I've played this game so far. And hopefully that's enough. Now, the big question for me with this card is, how do you win that next spot? Because you've spent 6 cards worth of effort going into only one location, right? Like because they're all getting merged in, right? Of course, there are some ways like, okay, I play a white tiger, right? And I get 10 power somewhere else and the white tiger gets merged into the Sinister Six, whatever. Like there's a few ways to distribute power like that, you know, even, you know, Mr. Sinister Brood, whatever. You can think of examples like that, but like, it's still going to be really hard to establish a lot of power elsewhere. In a Thanos deck, you know, if it happens fast enough, like if you can finish this on turn 4 or something, right? because you just like playing all stones and one drops and you get 6 really quick and you're drawing cards or whatever, then like, sure, you could maybe slam a Thanos somewhere else. And like, you know, Thanos helps you contest that next spot. And it's like, maybe got a big 5-drop or something to go with him. I don't know. But it's like still going to be kind of hard to piece all that out. Like, you know, just like going double barreled is going to be really tough. And I thought, well, okay, I think actually Taskmaster will work with this because the way Merge works, they all become kind of one card. I think even though you're not playing the Sinister Six itself, I think because it's merging, they inherit their traits, just the way with like Man Spider works and stuff. I think a Taskmaster will be able to copy the stat line, but the problem is, what if you draw Taskmaster first? What if he's one of your 6 first cards? You're totally screwed because you can't play a Taskmaster, right? Like, it doesn't work. And same thing with Arnim Zola. Like, Arnim Zola could be a way to duplicate your power too. But what if you draw Arnim Zola? Then you've completely broken your Sinister Six. Like, how do you make that work? So is there like some merge stuff here with Man Spider? Like, same problem, right? Like, I don't like, it's all in and too much. And like, if you draw things out of order that otherwise make Man Spider good, it's weird. It's like, I'm just having the hardest time envisioning how to win a second location. I don't know what to do. It's like Tribunal, same story. What if you draw Tribunal, you know? And it's like, well, crap, he's getting merged in. I lose his ability, you know? So it's like, is it literally just like Thanos or low cost spam decks or something like that where you just have to finish this super early and then hope you have enough left over? But even Thanos, like, what if you draw Thanos first? He's so expensive and hard to play. Like any line I take breaks this card. I just don't know how you build a deck because, like, you know, maybe you're running all those Arnim Zola and Taskmaster, assuming it works, and Thanos, and it's like, well, I drew all 3, screw me, I'm never gonna hit Sinister Six. Like, you have to have a super low curve, I think, to make this worth it. So I am just really having a hard time solving this card. It's cool, it's like free 12 points, like that's all good, but you have to win 3 spots in Marvel Snap, and I feel like that's just gonna hold this back. I don't know, maybe there's some solve here, something creative I just haven't envisioned yet, but all the lines I think about are really weird and tough. I'm even like, you know, Strange Supreme or something, right? Like, I don't even know how that works because if he eats the things that this wants to merge into, I'm not sure that breaks it or anything, but also like he would just eat, well, I guess he wouldn't eat the Sinister Six. Like, maybe that's an angle, like Strange Supreme eats your stones, but if the stones have already been eaten, like if they're merged into Strange Supreme, I don't know. I just don't think that's good either though, honestly. Like, it just doesn't sound good. So I want to love this card so much. This is exactly the sort of card I think I'm going to love, but I just haven't figured it out yet. I just think this isn't strong. So next up here is Tombstone. Man, we've been waiting on this dude to show up forever. Finally hitting the game. He is a 2/3 with on reveal, destroy your lowest power card at each other location. So nice little new destroy activator here, I think. We really haven't been getting too many of those. You know, it's like Carnage and Venom forever. They've kind of been the guys. Deathlock too, I guess. They've been the guys forever. We've got some that went in like different directions, like Kid Omega and stuff, I guess, and a few other support pieces. You know, fastball special, like that's a destroy activator in a different direction too, kind of. But I actually think Tombstone's pretty sneaky good. I like that this offers a lot of different flexibility. Sometimes things get stuck or weird or strange, or you get Cosmoed and it's like life gets, you know, just awkward. But Tombstone kind of lets you do that off-axis destroy. So like right now, destroy is all about dumping into a location and going hard on that because it's better for both Carnage and Venom, right? Because they want to stack. But like that's susceptible to the armors, to the Cosmos of the world. Tombstone wouldn't get around armor, but would definitely get around Cosmo, which is a more common answer because you can play your on reveal elsewhere while still destroying your Deadpool or whatever in the Cosmo location. So like that's pretty interesting already. But also like sometimes, you know, Wolverine rolls over here and X-23 rolls over here and it's like, well, crap. They went the wrong way. Tombstone fixes that problem again, right? Just offering this kind of multi-location destroy seems like it could be pretty high utility in a normal destroy shell. Like that just makes sense to me. But then also I can think of some cool applications with even like Nimrods, you know, the fact that you're able to destroy Nimrods in 2 spots is really, really cool. Whereas right now, you know, you go like Venom into Carnage and you kind of have that 3rd spot where nothing's hitting. Well, now you could like play both Venom and Tombstone on your Nimrod spot. You know, Venom eats the Nimrod, sends it over. Assuming you've structured it in the correct way that that is indeed your lowest power card at each location, you can play Tombstone and destroy both of those again and do like a little loop back, right? That may not always be best because you, in that exact scenario, be condensing a ton of power in one spot. But you know, it's just like, again, it gives you options to hit 2 at once, and like depending on how the previous turns have gone and where things are, and if you have a big kid omega somewhere or whatever, right, it just feels like it gives you options. I just feel like I would probably in many instances prefer Tombstone to something like a Carnage, or maybe Carnage Venom still hold off, but like a third, if you're running a third one like Deathlock or something. Like Deathlock has no upside. He's just a 3/5, right? Like this has some interesting upside, some flexibility that I think it would make the cut. So Destroy decks that need enough of those, I think Tombstone gets in there, man. I think this card's pretty cool for Destroy decks. I am excited to have this option. Like this sounds just more fun and more interesting than the Destroy stuff we have right now to me. And then our final card here is Spider Sense. I love when these skills actually are like super iconic things. I've talked about this all the time. Like Fastball Special, great choice for a skill. Spider Sense, great choice for a skill. I think that's awesome use of skills. Anyway, this is a new 5-mana skill. On reveal, give your characters here +2 power, and then costs 1 less for each movable card you've played. So this is another movable card synergy piece here, right in line with Aunt May. Of course, great for Spider-Man Brand New Day. And I think very likely this is sort of a 1 energy, 0 energy, maybe sometimes 2 energy, like 6 power buff, which is great. Even a 2/6 buff is actually pretty nice, especially if you hit targets that can somehow further scale that buff. You know, a Human Torch, for instance, could be great in a move deck. Now, you might need to go more movable than something like Human Torch, like we talked about with Aunt May. You may have to really hammer it in. So like not all those movable cards scale extra with stats like a Human Torch or a Multiple Man. So like it might be a little bit more honest or straightforward in its buff application. But like still, if it's a 0/6, you're not going to care. 0/6 is just great efficient stat output, right? And you get to dump it in one spot. Like that's really nice. Doesn't occupy space. So like, how often are you playing this for like 1 or 0 on turn 5 and then still leaving yourself space for later? That seems pretty great to me. So on top of like any other Venus synergies, you know, if you're doing a Venus package in there with it, you're getting discounts from Aunt May to make this even cheaper to discount, right? Like you could really piece together some pretty big stuff. So I don't think this goes like crazy. I don't know if this can also be played in like traditional buff decks. Like you'd love to give this to a Captain Carter location or something, right? But like that might be too hard, you know, like 5, you might have to spend a legit 5 on that. It'd be hard to get enough movable stuff potentially, but I still like, I think it's good enough, man. I think it's just solid. I think there's going to be a reason to play this for sure, because 0/6 is just really good, and I think that's going to happen a lot, and 1/6 is also pretty great, and I think that's going to happen even more. You know, 2/6 is maybe not a disaster, and I think that's going to be super easy to hit too. So it just feels like a good sort of foundation baseline power here for these movable decks. So all that said, let's go ahead and rate all these cards from 1 to 4 stars, starting from the best and moving to the worst. Spider-Man Brand New Day is a 4-star card. Mary Jane is a 4-star card. Scorpion Spider-Man Brand New Day is a 4-star card. Spider Sense is a 3-star card. Aunt May is a 3-star card. Tombstone is a 3-star card. Tarantula is a 3-star card. Boomerang is a 2-star card. Sinister Six is a 1-star card, which makes me incredibly sad, but I just got to see this. I just got to see this working before I believe in it. I just don't have the faith just yet. 4-star for fun. Hype level, maybe the highest one for me of them all, but like if I'm being honest, competitively, I just don't see it coming together just yet. So anyway, share your thoughts on all these cards down below. As you saw, multiple 4-star, potentially meta-defining cards. Lots of good 3-star cards too in my mind. I think just a lot of playable stuff here. Really not. That's a Hearthstone card. That's not a Marvel Snap card. What are you doing, Regis? Reviewing cards all day. If I could just sit around reviewing cards across like 20 card games all day, that would actually be pretty fun. I would like that a lot, but I don't know enough about other card games to do that confidently. Just Snap and Hearthstone. Anyway, share your thoughts on this month. I think it's going to be a pretty big one. Hopefully people have fun with the new Spider-Man stuff too, but Move is here, but I like that it's like a little different than traditional Move decks. For some reason I'm like vibing harder with just like play the Move cards and like get buffs for free instead of like the kind of machinations of Move where you're just like, you know, this is more just like points. Just do it and it works, and I think that's pretty cool. So anyway, that's my take. Share your thoughts down below. Thanks so much as always for watching, and I guess I will see you around.